If you've ever had a look at the Phanteks Evolv ATX case, then there are probably a few things that went through your mind when you first saw it, and somewhere near the top of that list is going to be, damn, that case is beautiful. I mean,
damn.
But also somewhere near the top there is probably going to be, how do those front fans get any air at all? I mean, there is literally a solid aluminium plate covering up the front of them. Reading the marketing material, you'll see that on the sides and at the bottom, there are gaps that allow air to pass through and supply the fans. However, there is a distinct airflow problem in this case, directly caused by that front plate. And what this is going to do is cause your system to run hotter and louder than it would necessarily have to if those fans were getting proper airflow. But also, especially in my situation, it was causing dust buildup due to the negative pressure inside the case, causing air to pass through the unfiltered gaps in my rear panel, allowing dust to accumulate in my system far faster than it would have to normally. So today we're going to do a couple of quick tests to have a look at the extent of this problem, and also try out an idea I had to solve the problem without ruining the beautiful look of the Phanteks Evolv ATX case. So this is going to be a bit more of a vlog style, just because it's going to be easier for me to show you what's going on. But this is my front fan filter, and this, this is the top, this is the bottom, and you can see from like the dust patterns that around here, and definitely around here at the top, there is not nearly as much dust accumulated on the filter. I purposely didn't clear this out for a very long time so that I could see this problem happening. And what is clearly happening is that the fans around here, where of course these two fans are having to compete for this bit of airflow coming in here, and around the top where there isn't a gap at the top to feed that front fan, the fans aren't getting nearly as much airflow, because you can see that because not enough dust is built up compared to the rest of it. And this is really frustrating me. And we'll have a look in a second that I should be getting positive pressure. Here's my system. I have the fans running at a worst case scenario, so the rear fan is running a little bit faster than the rest of the fans in the system. So I have 3 fans in push-pull on a radiator, so technically 6 fans on the front here drawing air in, 2 on the top pulling air out, and this one at the rear pulling air out as well, but this one's running slightly faster. I have the front restrictive aluminium panel off, and we're going to have a look using incense to see what the airflow is like at the moment. So I have a stick of incense. It was pretty much the cheapest stuff I could find. And that's, I don't even know if I'm doing this right. I assume I just light it on fire. So because there's so many gaps on this back panel, this is where most of the air is being drawn in order to equalize the pressure. And I could tell that because the pipes in my system, all of them on this side, they were like half covered in dust. So only this side of them was covered in dust and the other side wasn't. So I know that that's where the air is being drawn in. Let's just de-ash this. So you can see there that that air is being blown away from that back vent. It is not going into the case. So we can see that we have positive pressure without that front panel on. So I'm just going to pop it on there and see what happens. Okay, the front panel is now on. And oh dear God, look at that. That is getting very smoothly sucked into the case. Whew. Okay, solution time. Having a look at the side panel again, you can see that it's very flush with the front of the glass. My ingenious plan, is to literally space this from the front of the case. So have it something like this. This might look ghetto. I think it really depends on the system you have. Looking at this from the side, if I have it spaced out like this, that's a fair amount of spacing out. It won't really look too bad. I think that it will fit with my sort of system look in general. It depends on how far I have to space it out in order to get that good airflow. So we're going to go back to the incense and see quite how far I have to move this out before I get positive pressure in the case. So I think we've managed it. I think we have managed it. So I'll show you what it looks like, the amount of space I was giving it. Something like that. So not great, but we'll see the finished system in a bit. You're probably wondering how I intend to space out this panel. And if you have a look here, so these like nubbin sort of things hold it in place. And it's literally a bar of metal held in by 2 screws. What I intend to do is unscrew it and add a spacer in there. And the spacer I intend to use is some leftover pipe from my system. If I have a look at the distance I want to be moving out, we'll call it about an inch. I'll give it 3 centimeters in the first trial. I have plenty of pipe to use. This is quickly getting a lot more ghetto than I intended, but I'm on my floor. Here's a piece of tubing. This is just like a brass chrome plated tube. So I think it's going to look quite good if you are able to see it. I'm going to measure it and mark it with some electrical tape, just because I like the electrical tape going all the way around. Finally, I forgot how long this takes. Also, the metal gets really hot. There's the first bit. We're gonna have to file it up a bit. So I'm just smoothing off that edge. But also we need to get working on 3 more. Joy. Well, I would say interesting is definitely the word. I think it has the look I was kind of going for. I think I've pulled it out a bit too far. And I can't tell if it looks okay or not. I really can't, because I'm too used to it the way it was. This just looks like it's part disassembled to me, constantly. You can see the fan filter there, I'm not too bothered about that. My main issue is I/O. Is of course very spaced apart, but that is also screwed in, so we can space that away from there as well. And other than that, the LED bar at the bottom as well, so that, you've probably seen it before when I was doing the mod, just this directs the light along. So we might be able to fix that with another bit of tube. So the I/O panel itself, the way it screws in is a screw passes through a thin piece of plastic on it and screws into the case. Now, those are 632 screws. That's the same threading as radiators. It's the same as the threading to hold on the posts that held on the front piece. All I've done is spaced out the I/O panel block from the case using some foam, and then screwed it in with fan screws a little bit. And that has worked quite well, but it's not the most elegant system, and I will be swapping it out, but I just wanted to see if I could space this out at all and get that positive air pressure. I'm sure out there somebody has done a mod, or you could probably buy from a modding website a front plate with a grill cut out of it. I don't want to do that. I love the look of that front plate. I see why they put it there. I want everything, okay? I want the performance and I want the looks, but it's worked quite well. So I'm going to be keeping the posts as they are, I think. It's been a few weeks now since I completed the mod, and I'm very pleased to announce that it has grown on me. So I'm going to probably leave the spacing as it is, though it wouldn't be the recommended spacing I would go with. I might trim it down, especially if I visit my parents' house at some point soon, to use that angle grinder so I don't have to deal with the hacksaw again. But I'm very pleased with how this has turned out. And whereas I don't have temperature differences to be giving you, I could do sort of the number of degrees Celsius you could expect to drop off of your components by doing this modification. With my water-cooled system, I could do coolant temp at a set fan speed, but that wasn't actually the reason I did this modification in the first place. I did it because the negative pressure in my case was causing a dust buildup problem. And once again, I am happy to announce that the dust is gathering at a much slower and even layer along my system, because the airflow is moving all the way across the case and not just coming up through one side and then being expelled through the same side again. I have updated the front I/O modification, so it's actually in the way that I would recommend that you would install that now. So let's touch on that for a second. How would I recommend you do this modification yourself? Well, to start with, don't use chrome-plated piping. The only reason I did that was because I had it and it fit with the theme of my build. Instead, what I would recommend is using wood. So if we have a look at the front plate here, what I would recommend doing is, instead of having these chrome pipes here to space out this bar from the front panel, what I would do is just cut a piece of wood so that it fills this gap. Have it the amount of distance that you want to move this out, which I would recommend is 20 to 25 millimeters. I think that's the sweet spot in this situation for airflow and aesthetics. You could even get a cheap can of black spray paint and give it a quick coat. It doesn't even have to be like a thick multi-layered coat. Just get a quick coat on it and use it to space out this bar. And what that's going to do is you won't even be able to tell that's modification, because it's just going to look seamlessly black. And it's not in a part of the case where you can see it very well easily. As for putting the screws in, either drill holes where the screws are going to go through the piece of wood, but what you could just do is cut the wood so it sits between the two screws, and when you screw this bar down, that's going to hold it on. For the screws, like I said before, they're 632 thread, which is the same that you get on water cooling radiators for your computer. And that's good because they all come with long fan screws. So if you have a spare one of those, or you have spare screws from one of those, you can use them in this modification. It's not going to cost you a thing. As for the modification to the I/O panel and the LED, those were relatively easy, but you will need to get some 632 threaded bolts. The reason for this is that they are held onto the case by the screw passes through their bracket and screws only into the case. So if you were to just screw them in with long fan screws, they'd be able to slide up and down the length of that screw. What you're going to want to do is use a 632 threaded bolt to tighten behind the I/O panel or the LED bracket, whichever you're modifying at this point, and it's going to hold it at the end of the screw. Then you can tighten the screw into the case just a few turns, and that way it's going to hold the I/O panel or the LED at the end of that fan screw, which of course will be holding it away from the case at your desired length. To sum up then, the things you'll need to do this modification yourself are some wood, at least 7 632 threaded screws that are at the length you want to hold your front panel away from your case, and at least 3 632 threaded bolts to hold the LED and the front panel I/O block away from the case as well. I really recommend doing this. If you only space it a couple of centimeters, then it's really going to look fine. You're not going to ruin the look of your case at all. You'll actually struggle to see the difference, but it will give you such a significant increase in airflow, even at only 2 centimeters. Well, that's it for this video, everyone. Thank you all very much for watching. Let me know what you thought, if you'd like to see some of these more modification tutorials in the future. If you have a Phanteks Evolv ATX case, let me know if you intend to do this. And also let me know of any other modifications you've done to your cases in the past to improve temps or airflow at all. I'm sure there'll be very interesting reads down in the comments. Please rate this video while you're here and consider subscribing if you enjoyed it. But also check out my channel for a whole other load of tech videos, such as some cool PC builds, including used PCs, tutorials, and even some other modifications. But thank you all very much again for watching. This has been Frank Jaeger with Jaeger Tech. Have a good one.